Welcome to our trash revolution.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
The guy!
Turks, Jane Huger, Anna Kasparian with you guys on a lovely Monday evening.
It's a little cloudy.
It's a little cloudy here, but I'm sure it's of course very different where you are. Okay, so we've got a lot of big stories in the show today. So Trump has made a good number of mistakes. We'll be talking about them. Joe Rogan with some interesting points of view. I didn't know he had interesting points of view. That's where I add in the wink. Okay, and then private equity stealing from the elderly, and a progressive member of Congress going in an excellent direction.
Good direction.
Yes, so a lot of good news and bad news today, of course, as well. So Casper, what do you got for us?
Well, we need to start off with an update, an economic update, if you will, because there is still quite a lot of uncertainty in the economy, and Donald Trump is sending us a lot of mixed messages. So with that in mind, let's get to the details.
Inflation now, is that something that you're worried about given the impact of your efforts to readjust the economy?
I haven't heard that term in years. No, I don't know anything about it. This country is going to be more successful than it ever was. It's going to boom. We're going to have Boomtown USA. We're going to boom.
We're going to boom. Boomtown USA. There's a whole song about it. Okay?
Yeah. So as long as he says it, Anna, then it happens.
Then it happens.
Because once you go boom, boom, gone.
Boomtown USA.
Okay.
All right, but
maybe a little bit more complicated.
But is it? Are we headed toward Boomtown USA? Because everything we're seeing right now in terms of the analysis, the metrics, not Boomtown USA. So here's what the reality is. One day earlier, President Donald Trump made clear that he actually does not care. He doesn't give a hoot about economic ramifications that will result from his tariff policies. What are his tariff policies? We don't really know, okay? He threatens tariffs and then he pulls back, threatens them again, pulls back. But in regard to the auto tariffs, he seems to be very serious about it. Last week he announced that he would impose 25% tariffs on all foreign-made automobiles and auto parts that are imported to the United States. Even when it comes to cars that are manufactured within the United States, oftentimes they use parts that are manufactured elsewhere. And so he says, we start off with a 2.5 base, which is what we're at, and go to 25%. So collection of tariffs, according to President Trump, will begin on April 3rd. He also said that they would be permanent, and he's claiming that the US could end up collecting as much as $100 billion from tariff revenue. Now, some unions, including the United Auto Workers, are lauding President Trump for these tariffs, arguing that it'll actually bring manufacturing back to the United States and help auto workers. And sure, that could happen. We have yet to see a robust policy or plan in place by the Trump administration that would really help build up our manufacturing capabilities here in the US. But nonetheless, in the short term, regardless of whether or not the Trump administration gets its act together with that strategy, we are going to experience an increase in prices for cars in the US. And that might be true of the long term, but certainly it'll be true of the short term.
Yeah, so I have one solid prediction here, and then lots of interesting topics and speculation, and want to hear from you guys, etc. The one prediction that to me is obvious is they're going to be permanent. No chance they're going to be permanent. No way. It's going to be another tariffus interruptus because he does this, the stock markets crash, he panics, he withdraws it. Mm-hmm. So are we really going to have a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico and that, let alone Japan, South Korea, European Union, et cetera? When they strike back, Prices will go through the roof. There'll be massive panic. His economic numbers will be in the tank. Forget the stock market. His polling's already in disastrous shape. We'll show you about that. And when it comes to the economy, it'll be even worse at that point. You're telling me Trump is not going to flip-flop? I mean, it's interesting because there's some folks on the right and the left that think Trump never flip-flops. I don't know which president you're looking at.
No, he flip-flops all the time.
All the time,
yeah,
nonstop. So he'll definitely flip-flop on this. And one of the things we're asking you guys is, will he come to regret causing a tariff war? That's in the live chat poll. Shows obviously live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day. So I think he definitely will. It's already going very poorly for him. And there's going to be a lot more where that came from. There's one thing holding up his numbers overall, and it ain't this, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So let's talk a little bit about what the experts are saying. For instance, Auto Week has made some predictions in regard to the ramifications of these tariffs should President Trump go through with them. If a 25% tariff is imposed, prices could increase by as much as $12,000 for some models, or as little as $4,000 for others. In both cases, a cost that will almost certainly be passed on to US buyers. And look, that is a massive price hike at a time when Americans are still struggling from inflation. As we've talked about on the show, the Federal Reserve has decided against lowering interest rates. That was the last time Jerome Powell spoke to the public and explained what the Federal Reserve's policy is going to be. And it's because of the fact that inflation continues to be sticky. This is not going to help the situation. Now, I want to just pause and say this because I think it's important to put my cards on the table. I'm not necessarily against tariffs when you're implementing them with the intention to bring manufacturing back to the United States. But I need to see an actual plan in place. And also, in the first Trump term, he had implemented tariffs against China that had really hurt our farmers. But he used those tariffs that the federal government collected to make those farmers whole as a result of the business they were losing due to those tariffs. Is anything going to be done to help Americans out at a time of inflation if they need to buy a car and car prices go up as much as $12,000? See, like there needs to be a strategy and a plan in place, and then you'll get buy-in from the American people. For now, I don't really see a strategy, and I don't even see a consistent message from Donald Trump on this at all.
Yeah, so a couple of things about that. The reason that the farmers got that money is because they have a significant sized lobby. There's some small farmers, but there's also giant farmers as in farming corporations. So those guys put pressure on and say, hey, whatever you saved on the tariffs, funnel over to us. So it's another way of getting corporate donors a giant amount of money. There might be some small businesses in there, I hope there was, but most of it will go to giant corporate interests. So in this case though, when you have to pay $4,000 for more for a car, you don't have a lobby. So you're just gonna have to eat it, right? And that'll happen in all the different places. That Rand Paul is freaking out because it's not gonna just hit the car manufacturers in his home state, but also bourbon and whiskey and all those other products. When those prices go up and you pay it, you don't have a lobby to get it back, no way. And he says all of this will raise, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine, $100 billion. Okay, let's assume that that's true because it could be true. It could raise some money. It could have downsides but still raise money. Okay, how's that gonna pay for your $4.5 trillion tax cut?
Yeah, exactly.
Then we'll be down to 4.4 trillion tax cut. So it doesn't matter at all because they're gonna destroy the debt and the deficit momentarily. So this is all as a way of like distracting you as if they're doing big additions to the revenue through tariffs and deductions from the budget in terms of costs through Doge. None of which is really happening. So some of the small changes at Doge, again, also they brag on the website for Doge. We've saved $130 billion. And a lot of Democrats are disproving that, or reporters are disproving some of that, but that's not important because even if you give them that, say that's all they actually did save the whole $130 billion. Okay, now we're down to $4.3 trillion hole in the deficit because the rich want tax cuts.
And guys, take a step back and look at the whole picture here, because if you just look at the tariffs in a vacuum, you might either like them or hate them, whatever. But if you take a step back and you kind of look at what's been transpiring with Trump's economic policies so far, you have this austerity agenda, quite frankly, right? They're looking to cut some of these social safety net programs, including Medicaid, to the tune of $880 billion. And that was the direction given to the committee in the House responsible for Medicaid. They were told through this budget blueprint that they need to find $880 billion in cuts. And so you have austerity coupled with tariffs that are very likely, if he goes through with it, going to increase prices. Interest rates remain high, inflation remains high or sticky. I mean, American consumers, Americans in general, are going to be crushed by this. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned the stock market. The stock market has been a bit of a disaster. It's been incredibly turbulent. But right now, as I speak, the stock market is down. I'm not crying tears for the wealthiest. The top 10% are the ones who are mostly invested in the stock market. But think about all the people who have their retirement funds who are suffering right now as a result of the stock market downturn.
Yeah, so Box in a YouTube member section is an interesting guy with different points of view. He writes in pretty often. By the way, become a member, be part of the show like Box is. You can hit the join button below on YouTube. Rich folks, he says, don't like more taxes. That's why they're so afraid right now. Bring on the tariffs.
Interesting.
But here's what I'd say back to you, Box. I hear you, but there is, and we've talked about this on a couple of shows, there's a right way to do tariffs where you think through, okay, what are reciprocal? What is China doing in this vertical, right? And what can we do to match them? Because it's not fair that they're putting X amount of tariffs on us, but we're not putting it on them. Fair, okay, no problem, we can do that in a lot of different places. Hey, what's a tariff that protects this particular industry in America that's important to national security or just is important for manufacturing? And how do we mitigate the downsides of the tariff that'll come? That's the kind of strategizing that a smart populace would do about tariffs, right? But I know that these tariffs have absolutely no chance of working because they haven't strategized at all.
That's exactly right.
They haven't figured out how to mitigate any of its downsides. That's why he's going up and down, flip-flopping nonstop. They haven't thought it through. They're not targeting, they're doing it in a broad way. They're not saying, hey, we're gonna go reciprocal with Japan and South Korea there, but European Union is okay because we're already on the same level. Whatever it might be, I give that as just a hypothetical. Instead, they're going blanket all against all of our allies. Okay, European Union, Canada, Japan, it doesn't matter, you're all getting it. Well, okay, that doesn't make any sense. And so things that don't make sense blow up. They do go boom, but not the way that Trump thinks.
Now, maybe this exchange will change Box's mind because NBC reporters were talking to Trump and they asked him what his message was to the motor industry CEOs and whether he had warned them against raising prices. Here's what Trump said. The message is congratulations. If you make your car in the United States, you're going to make a lot of money. If you don't, you're going to have to probably come to the United States because if you make your car in the United States, there is no tariff. When pressed if he told CEOs not to raise prices, here's how Trump responded. No, I never said that. I couldn't care less if they raise prices because people are going to start buying American-made cars. I couldn't care less. I hope they raise their prices because if they do, people are gonna buy American-made cars. We have plenty. Okay, so we don't have plenty. Actually, Tesla happens to be the most American-made car, not just in terms of being manufactured here. Yes, they also have manufacturing plants in other countries as well, but they manufacture Teslas in the United States. And in terms of the parts used to manufacture the cars, they're mostly American parts, but there are some foreign-made parts as well. The point is, it seems like if he does go through with this tariffs policy, the car company that stands to benefit the most would be Tesla, no?
Yeah, second most. Rivian would benefit the most, Tesla the second most. Ford is somewhere in the middle, and then GM and Stellantis would be very hurt.
What are you doing, Ford? What are you doing, Ford? You're really gonna make your cars in the US, come on.
Okay, so that's why we're in an interesting situation here where we do want to protect manufacturing in America. We do want cars made in the US. So that's why we're not blanket against tariffs. Some tariffs for that industry might make some sense, but I have no confidence that they've put any kind of decent thought into this. And then here's Tesla popping up, and this is not us. This is senior analyst in an article on CNBC, right? Explaining Tesla does wind up being a big winner here. Because the price of their competitors' cars will go up significantly and theirs won't. Now, Elon says, well, we're also
going to increase prices.
Yeah, don't worry, we're also going to increase prices. No, he says we're also going to be hurt by some of these tariffs. Yes, but a lot less so than the other car dealers and the other car makers, I should say. And so that's why they stand to gain, and that's what the analysts say. Maybe that is a coincidence, maybe that isn't. That's up for you to decide.
So regardless of how you feel about this entire economic situation, when you take a look at the bigger picture, Americans not so happy. Remember, Donald Trump got elected over Kamala Harris because more Americans felt that he would be better for the economy as opposed to Kamala Harris. But that has not really come to fruition for voters, and that's based on what they're saying in these polls. So let's go to this CBS YouGov poll, and you'll see how people are grading him based on various areas of his administration. So when it comes to immigration, for instance, he still has high marks. 53% of respondents say that they approve, but 47% disapprove. The economy, more Americans disapprove at 52% than approve 48% of Trump's handling of the economy. So he's starting to really suffer in the polling when it comes to how he's handling the economic situation in the United States. Let's go to the next one. So if you look at this graphic, just 23% of Americans now believe Trump's economic policies are making them better off. That's down from 42% in January. Nearly twice as many people now say he's making their finances worse. And that's a massive 33-point swing. Better off prevailed by a 14-point margin in January, but now trails by 19%. Also, many voters believe that Trump's priorities are kind of out of whack here. Let's take a look at this graphic. So 64% of Americans think the Trump administration is not focusing enough on lowering prices, while 55% believe he's focusing too much on tariffs. And the overwhelming majority of respondents, that's 72%, also believe the tariffs will create price increases in the short term, and honestly, likely the long term if he doesn't have a strategy in place to actually foster and facilitate the manufacturing in the US necessary to keep costs down. And final thing that I'll leave you with, Cenk, is Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, was confronted about the terrible polling numbers, and she decided to blame an interesting figure here. Let's take a look.
Is the president doing enough to answer the needs and demands of the American voter when it comes to the economy and lowering prices?
The president and his economic team are working on this effort every single day. And the president is not only trying to fix the mess created by the previous administration's incompetence and reckless spending, he is trying to fix decades of unfair trade practices that have ripped our country off, that have sent jobs overseas, and that have forced millions of Americans out of their jobs.
So I guess we're blaming Biden for what's happening in the economy at this very moment.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave out Clinton or Obama or Carter or Grover Cleveland. So brother, we know what the economy was when you took over, and now it's gotten worse. And so here's the thing that apparently people in Washington don't understand yet, because the Democrats certainly don't understand it. They thought, no, even though Joe Biden can't speak, we'll pretend he's young and dynamic and we'll trick the whole country, right? Yeah. Now Trump and his team think, even though prices are going up and they're about to skyrocket in some places like, in cars, we're going to pretend that it wasn't us and it wasn't the tariffs and it was Biden and Jimmy Carter and James Polk. Okay, good luck. You're trying to do the same tricky pizzicky maneuver that the Democrats did.
It's not that tricky.
And how did that wind up for them? It didn't. So, by the way, look, there's something great going on here. Such a silver lining to this story and a lot of other stories. Politicians these days are getting caught a lot quicker, okay? So if you ask me how long is it gonna take for Trump voters to turn on Trump, I would have said, we're not even having that conversation until 6 months in. At 8 or 9 months, you might start to see some cracks, and at 18 months, I think, will probably be in trouble. Here, look at that poll, 33-point swing on if you're better off economically since January.
Yeah,
that's just like with 2, max 3 months, and already the Trump voters are like, no, I'm not better off. You can keep telling me I'm better off, and you can keep telling me Joe Biden's young, but I see the price of eggs and I see the price of everything, and I'm not better off. And so that is super refreshing to see, because you'd be shocked at how much propaganda from both sides affects polling, right?
That's true, yes, but I think the tactic of attempting to gaslight the American people never worked. It's not working right now, and I'm glad to see it's not working. Americans aren't gaslightable, okay? They live in the real world, they see what their finances look like, they see what the economic conditions are. You can't convince them otherwise.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep saying it. The fact that the mainstream media monopoly has been broken is amazing news.
Yep.
Because people are getting their news now from a whole bunch of different sources and not just from 2 propaganda outlets. So that's why they're catching on much quicker. So Trump can keep trying to play these games, but I think he didn't get caught on the economy last time, partly because he had the establishment on his team pumping the brakes, and they wound up in some sort of weirdo balance that halfway worked for 3 years, right? And you could say, hey, I'm wrong about that, et cetera, no problem. But what you're gonna see here is now, without those brakes in the car, he's gonna hit that brick wall a lot quicker. And then what he does after that will be interesting. Well, I don't know what he'll do.
Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel calls the shots in the Trump administration. He seems to know it and is bragging about it. We'll give you that story and more when we come back.
All right, let's go to our viewers. On Super Chat, HH writes in, what do we do when they don't allow midterms? Well, brother, I think I'm a lot more confident that they will than I was before Trump got elected. And you might think that's curious. They've broken a lot of things since he got elected, but I expected them to do that. I mean, why do you think I fought so hard against Trump? The guy who says he's gonna terminate the Constitution, it's not a shock to me that he's saying he'd like a 3rd term and he wants to run for a 3rd term, right? So that's exactly why I voted against him. So what I am surprised by, I said it after the election, no one, we had all these fights about whether it's true or not. Now I think I'm more than right than I even realized. No, these Rosphere guys, they're not gonna let him do that stuff. Like, we'll tell you a little bit later in the show about how Rogan's in a rebellion in a couple of different ways. A whole bunch of them are in rebellions. We showed the Portnoy rebellion. There's rebellions everywhere. I know some folks on the left don't want to see it, et cetera. That's okay, we'll show you, you'll see it with your own eyes. But if Trump said we're canceling the midterms, no, all those guys, Rogan, Friedman, or
it's not
Schultz,
just them either.
all those guys, Dave Smith, they'd all lose it, absolutely lose it. They'd never allow it.
And it's not just the bros, it's also like establishment Republican politicians. Today on CNN, there were a few of them I caught just basically saying, it's against our Constitution, this is not gonna happen.
Yeah, this is a non-starter. So I feel much better about it now, because what's really troubling is if all their media is in lockstep,
right,
and if all their politicians are in lockstep, and they're not. They're starting to become a good mess,
right,
okay? So, and we want that. And not because, oh, it's a mess, but because it would protect democracy. Michael Cotavelli says, USMCA was negotiated and signed by Donald J. Trump. So when his press secretary says it's the worst trade policy, is she not talking about how bad Trump negotiates? Well, I mean, that's a great question. That's why I love how smart our audience is. Someone should have asked her that in the press pool. All right, on YouTube member section, your sofa king, we taught it, said, can anyone not defend reciprocal tariffs? It only relies on the other country tariffing us, meaning if they take their tariffs off, we take our tariffs off. Do people not see this? Well, I'm not sure about other people, but I see it. But you know what, I would love that. If we reciprocal tariffed them and then there were no tariffs in either direction, that'd be a huge win for us and for the whole world. Cassandra Kaepernicka says, Trump doesn't care about the working class pain. Tariffs across the board is like treating an ingrown nail by amputating the leg. Cassandra, that's a terrific analogy and could be applied to almost everything Trump is doing, right? Oh, we're gonna cut some costs. Oh, good, you found some corporate subsidies to cut or some corruption. No, I just came in with a chainsaw and just fired 130,000 people, almost all of whom were innocent and didn't do anything wrong. Why did you amputate the leg? We had an ingrown nail. What's wrong with you? Okay, Angel Precious Justice says they're advertising before tariff sales here in Texas. I don't blame them. It's a good reaction to what's gonna happen here. Geeky Gage says he's underwater on almost every issue, but his overall approval has hardly moved. How is it not a cult when people hate what he does but still love him? That's a really important question. It's because they love what he's doing on immigration. That's where he pulls through the roof. All right, back on TYT, the online news network. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and America with you.
America.
Okay, Casper, what do you got?
This story is wild, so buckle in, buckle up, let's get to it.
This is why we must all commend President Trump's decisive actions against anti-Semitism. And we must pressure other governments to do the same.
Is the United States government now just taking edicts and orders from Israel? Is this what people voted for when they elected Trump, is to have a country taking orders from Israel? I don't think so.
You just heard from Tim Dillon, who isn't some lefty. And it is pretty clear that Israel is calling the shots in the United States as students have their visas and green cards revoked and are getting arrested simply for expressing criticism of how Israel is prosecuting the war in Gaza. And you don't have to take it from me. In fact, take it from Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu.
These ignorant demonstrators, who are they demonstrating for? For these murderers, these rapists, these mass killers? This is a reflection of a deep rot that has pervaded the intellectual hub of free societies. And this vilification of Israel, the Jewish people, and Western values has been propagated by a systemic alliance between the ultra-progressive left and radical Islam. It must be resolutely fought by civilized societies to safeguard their future. This is why we must all commend President Trump's decisive actions against anti-Semitism. And we must pressure other governments to do the same.
I'm just gonna comment briefly on what he had to say about a free society in Israel, because it reminded me of something I came across from my good friend Ben Burgess on X today. He shared a headline with the public. Let's take a look at this. Today's update from the only democracy in the Middle East: Israeli troops killed 15 Palestinian medics and buried them in a mass grave, UN says. That's just the latest.
Yeah, so first of all, Israel.
Don't protest it though,
Yeah.
sorry.
First of all, Israel's not a democracy. You can't imprison 5.5 million people in open air prisons, murder them anytime you like, cut off their power, electricity, and food and water anytime you like, and claim you're a democracy. That's absurd, totally absurd. In no other country that enslaves 5.5 million other people gets to call themselves a democracy. So it's always been propaganda from day one. Number two, Netanyahu does so much damage to in causing anti-Semitism throughout the world. He keeps conflating Israel with Jewish people across the world. Those two things are not the same thing. My friends here in America did not want to help you in your genocide and ethnic cleansing. So stop saying, and by the way, take another country. Erdogan's doing now monstrous things in Turkey and trying to end democracy there. But criticizing Erdogan doesn't mean you're criticizing me. Okay, I'm criticizing Erdogan. Doesn't mean you're criticizing Turkish people. But if we did this with every country, we drive hatred towards every set of people, because the Turkish government is at some point going to do terrible things. And I don't want people to hate Turks over it. The Israeli government is going to do terrible things, is in the middle of doing terrible things. You shouldn't hate Jewish people over it. But Netanyahu is constantly trying to confuse you on that, right? Oh, my government equals all Jewish people. So that's because he doesn't want his government criticized, right? But in reality, he's doing massive damage to Jews across the world by equating them with one of the most monstrous governments we've had in our lifetime. No, Dick Cheney does not represent all of America, and Netanyahu does not represent all Jewish people in the world. Now, but look at what he does, man. This guy's a trope machine, right? as people are worried about anti-Semitism, he's like, now we will pressure all the governments to follow my orders. How does that help? And I'm glad that Donald Trump has been walked around like a dog. I gave him a little biscuit and a treat, and he did exactly as I ordered him. Now I will order Germany and France and other countries to do exactly as I said. But don't believe in an anti-Semitic trope about how I control the world. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Don't do the trope. And by the way, they don't. Do they control Indonesia? No, they don't. Do they control Norway and other countries? No. Ireland? No. Ireland's an open revolt against Israel. So the trope is not true, but Netanyahu's trying to make it appear like it's true, right?
Let's hold on. I think it's really, really important to differentiate between Jewish people, okay, and the Israeli government, okay? Jewish people do not control the world. That is the trope, and it's a disgusting trope. The government of Israel controls the United States.
Yes, that's definitely true.
It does.
No,
let's just keep it real. I mean, come on. We're literally, by the way, how many students at this point? Obviously, Mahmoud Khalil was the first student who was arrested, sent away. No one even knew which detention center for some days until we finally figured out where he was. He was just the first one. There's also Ali Reza Daroudi. He is an Iranian student. There isn't even any evidence of him engaging in any protest against Israel's war against Gaza.
And then there's Öztürk, who's a Turkish American. Sorry, she's not American, she's on a student visa.
Yes.
That was in Boston.
Yes.
And she's working on her PhD, did an op-ed talking about economic boycott of Israel. They're like, that's it, you're under arrest and you're gonna get deported.
That's crazy. Okay, that's
for an op-ed?
That is supposed to go against our values as Americans. Okay, these students didn't engage in terrorism, they didn't harass Jewish students. There's no evidence of that. They simply stated their opinion. And in the case of Öztürk, she was a co-author in an op-ed for the student paper.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's over there. Netanyahu's over there bragging about how they managed to get this accomplished, and they want to go further. And let's not forget what he mentioned about this alliance among the progressive left and radical Islam. What?
Yeah, I want to get to that in a second. So one last thing about Israel controlling countries. Does Saudi Arabia and UAE partly control America through their funding of think tanks, lobbyist groups, et cetera, and the way that they funnel money to both parties? Yes, it's not just Israel, okay? But does Israel have significant and massive control over the American government through donations that are legal here in America? People who love Israel, they're American citizens, presumably, almost we think, as far as I know, let's put it that way, they all give and they go, now I want you to support Israel, okay? And I don't want any questions, I don't want any nuance. My group, AIPAC, Democratic Majority for Israel, et cetera, and they're definitely not supporting Jewish Americans. They've actually targeted some Jewish members of Congress, and 70% of Democrats, Jewish Americans, by the way, voted against Trump. Okay, so, but what they are saying is now we support the Israeli right wing. And if you dogs that we give money to, like the drug companies do, oil companies do, et cetera, if you dogs don't behave, we will take away your treats. And almost 98% of the Republican Party and a huge percent, like 60% at a bare minimum of the Democratic Party go, absolutely, sir. Who do you want me to bow to? Netanyahu? Oh, standing ovation after standing ovation. You want to commit more war crimes, blank check after blank check.
Yep.
Does Israel control Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
You'd have to be really a giant liar or enormously biased to say that they don't. You'd have to go out of your way to twist reality to say they don't. Of course they do.
Look, this question came up, Cenk, during my appearance on Piers Morgan's show last week, right? And it was really interesting because people usually can't wait to interrupt you. Piers Morgan himself can't wait to interrupt you as you are answering the question he just asked you. But no one interrupted me when I was saying what I needed to say. And so I want to go to video 5 here, and you'll get a sense of why I believe the Israeli government does have control over the American government. Take a look.
But this principle of deporting students for their political allegiances or views, where do you sit on that?
I mean, our government will certainly try to do that as long as the government of Israel demands it. And our government, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans, is completely controlled by the Israeli government, and they're gonna do the Israeli government's bidding. That's what this is really about. That's all it is. So protesters who are legal residents, permanent residents who have green cards will be deported simply for exercising their freedom of speech and criticizing how the Israeli government is prosecuting this war in Gaza, slaughtering tens of thousands of innocent women, children, elderly people, civilians. They're gonna continue the slaughter. They don't want any backlash from anyone in the United States about it, including American citizens, including permanent residents. And remember, Miriam Adelson and the Adelson family overall gave Donald Trump hundreds of millions of dollars to not do what's right for the United States, but to do what's right for Israel. So Donald Trump is going to do that. I mean, you think Trump is like sitting around thinking about, these students and how much he himself personally wants to deport them? No, he's doing a transaction.
Yeah, so, hey,
come on.
Imagine Trump's like, I read that op-ed at Tufts.
Come on.
I want to take action on it. No, he got an order from AIPAC to deport the enemies of Israel.
And he's doing it like a good boy.
And not even enemies, like slight critics of Israel. So look, I think that clip Anna showed you is really interesting, because if Anna had said that on CNN just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? She would have been escorted out of the building. The host would have jumped down her throat. Every other panelist would have jumped down her throat. Now it's like, well, who would object? The right doesn't object, the left doesn't object. Any sentient human being knows that Israel controls Washington, D.C., and it's not complicated. How? Through the campaign donations.
Yeah.
It's legalized bribery, right? So, okay, along those lines, I was listening to a Club Random podcast, this Bill Maher's podcast when Andrew Schultz was on. It's a really good podcast, by the way, in that particular episode. Andrew Schultz is an interesting cat, and he convinced Bill Maher on a couple of things that I thought were great. Anyways, but when they got to this issue, Bill, of course, as always, frothing at the mouth about Israel, right? Mahmoud Khalil's a terrible guy. He's filled with hate. Right? You don't know anything about Mahmoud Khalil, right?
Right.
But nevertheless, this is a hilarious way of me giving Bill Maher credit. Okay, nevertheless, he's like, yeah, no, we shouldn't deport him. That's crazy. Even if I hate him, even if I hate his opinions on Israel, why are we deporting someone for speech? Thank you, Bill. Thank you for not being a hypocrite and for living up to what has been your ideals on free speech for all along.
So there are actually some on the right who are condemning what's happening with these green card students who are being sent away, arrested, their green cards revoked. We're gonna get to them in just a minute, but I actually wanna go to one other video, because in this next clip, you're going to see David Friedman, who actually was Trump's ambassador to Israel in his first term. He doesn't just stop at progressives and their critique of Israel. He's also focusing on the right wing as well. And I suspect that this is waking the right wing up.
Yeah, it's not gonna play well.
Because if you think that free speech violations are only gonna impact the left, you'd be mistaken. Take a look.
I condemn anti-Semitism on the right and on the left. I'm an equal opportunity condemner of anti-Semitism.
You're alluding to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, none of them are any good on the right. On the left, I don't like any of these anti-Semites, and I'm not shy about it. But the government, the United States government, or the government of France, or the government of any other country, has the power to rein in anti-Semitism in a much more effective way. And people say, well, the governments are not in the business of changing the way people think. That's true, but to my thinking, most people who are, anti-Semites, most of these people running around, we're not going to win their hearts and minds, because they don't have hearts and they don't have minds. So, how are we gonna? There's no reason to think we're ever going to convince them. But we can deport them. We can put them in jail. We can make their lives miserable. We can cut off their funding, and that's what the Trump administration is doing for the first time.
Okay, now understand what he considers anti-Semitism. And by the way, you're an American citizen. If you are spewing anti-Semitic garbage, you're actually free to do that as long as you don't act on it, right? Free speech is a thing. Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment. This guy thinks that simply criticizing how Israel is prosecuting the war is already anti-Semitic. It's already anti-Semitism. And he wants to throw you in prison for it.
Yeah.
In prison for it.
And by the way, that was an answer to a question about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. So we're not talking about student visas anymore.
Oh my God.
Now we're talking about core American podcasters, people in media on the right and the left. If you criticize Israel, he says, well, you have no heart and you have no mind. You have no heart because of course you should know when Israel slaughtered 15,000 children, it was the most moral thing to do. And if you dare disagrey, we'll arrest you. And what did he say? Oh, we'll cut off your funding. By the way, he's like, it's anti-Semitic to say that the Jews would control speech in America. But if you dare cross Israel, we will cut off your funding, we will deport you, we will arrest you. But don't say it. If you say it, what I just said, I'm gonna call you an anti-Semite.
I know, maybe I'll throw you in prison.
Okay, if you dare cross me, I will control every part of your life. But no, don't say that, don't say that. No, look, this clown does not represent all Jews in America. My friends do not control a damn thing. Okay, they would like Israel to stop. Okay, so, but some powerful people in this country like him believe that Israel is the boss of us. And that if we have the temerity to even politely disagree with Israel, that there will be severe consequences from a lobby he controls and other people like him control. But don't worry, left wing and right wing, they're equal opportunity condemners. Israel condemns America and condemns all of your media. Oh, okay, good to know, good to know.
He also said something along the lines of, it's not good enough to say you're against anti-Semitism, you have to be anti-Semitic, which is exactly what like Ibram X. Kendi would get like skewered about by the right wing because it was, his whole argument is it's not good enough to be against racism, you have to be anti-racist, which is a separate thing. And it's just, people are calling these guys out because they're like, yeah, the right wing hates this.
Yeah.
We hate this. This is what they consider wokeism, right?
Yep,
so
100%. With
that in mind, let's now go to Tim Dillon. So he's a comedian, if you're not familiar with him, he is not a lefty, but he's not really liking what's happening right now with the targeting of these students. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
I didn't vote on letting any of these people into the country. No one did, by the way. But I'm certainly not for removing people that have a differing opinion. That is free speech. I don't think that's the right way to go. But let's watch this disappearance.
Ma'am, you got
Is this being done for America or for Israel? I mean, this is a fair question. Is the United States government now just taking edicts and orders from Israel? I think it's a fair question to ask. Does anyone feel safer with this woman off the streets? Is this the American government's? Is this what people voted for when they elected Trump, is to have a country taking orders from Israel? I don't think so. She's a legal US resident. She participated in pro-Palestinian protests as a legal US resident. Her arrest follows the White House's crackdown on what is classified as anti-Semitism on US campuses. What is this? And does anyone feel uncomfortable with this?
Yeah, I feel deeply uncomfortable with this. And I'm happy to see that it's not just lefties who feel uncomfortable with it. You also have people like Eli Lake. Eli Lake is a big defender of Israel, has spoken out against what's happening to these students. I give him a lot of credit for that. Dave Smith, of course, has been speaking out against this. He's a libertarian. So more and more people who are Trump supporters are coming out and saying, no, this is not okay. This goes against our values. And I commend them for that because there's a lot of free speech warriors out there that ain't really about free speech when it's inconvenient for them.
Yeah, I literally don't know a single Jewish American that is in favor of these kidnappings. Okay, so like this isn't to serve Jews, this isn't to fight anti-Semitism. This is to serve a lobby that is for a foreign government. And so the fact that comedians and right-wingers, et cetera, are all waking up going, wait, what did she do against America?
Right.
Nothing.
Or
right.
What does she do against Israel? You're not allowed to have an opinion about a foreign country, really?
Well, apparently in America, you could be an exchange student, you could be a green card holder, resident alien that's legally here. You could have any vicious opinion you like about America or white people or black people, or, by the way, ironically, of Jews. You could say any anti-Semitic thing you like, but if you say something against Israel, you're gonna be taken out, okay? And look, last couple of things here. We had this hilarious poll. Does Netanyahu have too much influence in the United States? I'm just curious, it's in the live chat, shows at 6 o'clock every day. 5% believe no. Nope. What influence Netanyahu? But anyway, 95.5, that's not surprising. Last thing is, if you notice there, the topic I wanted to come back to, Netanyahu started saying now the left in America equals radical Islam. So that we're terrorists, right? So now the left has to get locked up. And he didn't say student visa, he didn't say green card. He just left equals radical Islam. So now if you're on the left, you better watch yourself, because the Israeli thought police might just arrest you if Netanyahu gets his way. But as you saw with Friedman, they're saying, well, we start with the left, but we're equal opportunity condemners.
Yeah.
So Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and everyone else, you start slightly criticizing Israel. We got a jail in Louisiana and then one in El Salvador that Israel can send you to via the US government.
It's pretty gross. All right, when we come back, why don't we get into some of the updates on Trump's immigration policies, because now you have folks like Joe Rogan and Konstantin Kisin speaking out against it. We'll be right back.
Let's go to our members on TYT.com. Jack Callahan said, the only boom is felt in Yemen, Gaza, and possibly Iran. Good point, Jack. Kobe said, I feel like I'm living through 1984. Everything is doublethink and it hurts. Oh my God, you're totally right. And it's not just the administration. All over media, including our own media, right? Some folks. Anyway, everything's doublethink. What you say is the exact, I'll say something and they'll say, okay, so what you said is the exact opposite. I'm like words have no meaning anymore.
By the way, this, I just saw this. So Trump was asked, what he thinks about, or whether he's comfortable watching the arrest of Öztürk, the PhD student who was arrested by masked men.
I'm so curious what he said.
It's terrible. I haven't really looked at it.
Oh, it could have been worse. Yeah, of
course. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, of course he doesn't care. Like I was worried he was gonna say, yeah, it looks great. That's what we should do with all these people. Oh, they're all terrorists. He hasn't looked at. I'm not sure of anything. Like that's almost neutral. Like it could have been way worse. Anyways, but it certainly could have been better, of course. Anyways, let's keep going. Sexy Speed Racer says, yeah, it's gonna boom, as in blow up. Susie Greenberg says, sending you, Cenk and Anna, love and support. Thank you for everything. And I'm sorry so many folks on the far left are spreading lies about you both. Susie, I appreciate you. You're wonderful for saying that. Thank you. What I was referring to just a second ago is I do a tweet criticizing Trump for deporting the guy who was not in the Venezuelan gang. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. And the radical left guys, and not because of their policies, but because of their attitude, they get in there and they're like, oh yeah, you see that, you're coddling Trump. I'm like, the tweet was a criticism of Trump. Do words not have any meaning anymore? And they don't, because that's what a closed mind does. But anyway, we love you, Susie, thank you. Churche de Lanosa says, 100% Anna, Washington DC is Israeli occupied territory. Sir Jenks Buns of Steel says,
but why?
I'm so glad I grew up with a Jewish stepdad so I could know that this isn't the Israeli way. We used to laugh about a room for old billionaires controlling the world. Now we literally have it laying our face daily. Yeah, so I think anti-Semitism rises from people who don't know Jewish people, right? Because if you know Jewish people, you're like, oh yeah, Bob and Dave and Ben, they didn't They're not part of a cabal. They're not, the Council of Zion doesn't call them and ask them what to do, okay? So all that stuff is nonsense. But are there powerful people in the world? Of course there are, and they're from a variety of different races, ethnicities, etc. We just have to, make sure that none of them, and no particular group, captures the US government. Wang Jian says, when they say free speech isn't free, they actually mean that free speech is behind a paywall and AIPAC paid for premium. That's an interesting way of putting it. Churchy also wrote in, the one positive of Netanyahu speaking out, he feels he has to make these speeches because he sees the world starting to stand up against him, something he has never really had to face before. Well, we'll see. I mean, I haven't seen too much of people, government standing up to him. Semper Fire Dog said, thank you for gifting 5 subs on Twitch. You're awesome. We appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Wayne Gretzky.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We mentioned boxes, it's Boxes Day today. So he wrote in a super chat, I just want to read this real quick. Anna, the comment section in the Pures video was overwhelmingly positive for you. Left, right, center were all praising you. It was a breath of fresh air. It was great, you should check it out. So we put up as much of our appearances as we can on tyt.com/press. So you can see us on other channels, other networks, etc. And you'll notice, by the way, we're on left, right, and center, despite what some people say. So check those out. And yeah, common sense is resonating with everybody these days. We should all give it a shot.
People are hungry for it, and I don't blame them. I think everyone needs it, so.
Yeah, you know what people can't stand anymore, except some, which is like super partisan, my side is 100% right, my side is 100%. People are sick of that crap. Except, of course, some.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, let's check in on what's going down with some of Trump's immigration policies. There's a new federal judge ruling that we're gonna get into in just a minute as well. But first, let's start with this.
You gotta get scared that people who are not criminals are getting like lassoed up and deported and sent to like El Salvador prisons.
With a bunch of these Trinidad guys, allegedly they got at least one guy who wasn't a criminal, who was just a gay barber who I think, according to the story, came here legally. He was here legally, that's what they said.
Joe Rogan and Konstantin Kisin weighed in on the wrongful deportation of a Venezuelan migrant who was sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador, with ICE claiming that he was a member of Tren Aragua. However, it appears that is not the case. In fact, he wasn't even in the United States illegally. He was here legally. He had a legitimate asylum claim. He came in through a port of entry and made that asylum claim. And his name's André Hernandez. He's a gay makeup artist who's been an outspoken critic of Venezuela. And I just feel like it's pretty obvious he's not a Tren Aragua gang member.
Yeah, they don't even allow gay people into the gang. So among 1,000 reasons why he's not a gang member. So this is what happens when you don't do due process.
Exactly.
Because the courts are supposed to check. Oh, is he a gang member or isn't he? Oh, is he undocumented or isn't he? Did he come here legally or not? Because if you don't check, you get people who did come here legally and that aren't in a gang. And that's why, like, if he did this without doing it in a dumb way, and he just rounded up the actual gang and made sure, then shipped him off, some people would still be mad that he's sending him to a hellhole in El Salvador. But overall, the American people would be massively on his side.
Yeah, and look, I want to be 100% clear. Everyone, including individuals who are suspected of being gang members, and there's actual evidence, showing that they're part, doesn't matter. You need to go through the proper channels. There needs to be due process. There's a reason why due process exists. And if you think it's okay to just throw it away when it comes to individuals who the federal government is simply accusing unilaterally of doing something criminal, well, I mean, you're really allowing so much power to be concentrated in the federal government to the point where they can accuse anyone of anything. and you don't get your day in court. That's crazy. That is absolutely insane. And I'm really happy that people are waking up to how insane that really is. Now, in this case, we're talking about a Venezuelan migrant who made a, legitimate asylum claim through the proper channels. He was in the country legally. He's sent to El Salvador, meaning a third country, to a detention facility for hardened criminals and terrorists. That's SECOT. That's insane. Now, he had sought asylum in the United States through a port of entry, but the Trump administration argues that he's part of Tren de Aragua because he has gang tattoos. Oh, interesting. So, they make the claim. I want to see the gang tattoos. Maybe they have a legitimate argument here. Here's what the tattoos look like. Here are the tattoos that ICE declared were evidence that this guy, gay makeup artist who came to a port of entry seeking asylum from Venezuela, was a member of a vicious gang. I'm not making this up. This is it. Mom and dad with crowns over them. Those are not gang tattoos. But apparently it didn't matter because despite the fact that it's obvious those aren't gang tattoos, his lawyers have not been able to reach him since March 15th. And after interviewing him, he says he is not a member of the gang. Somehow an ICE officer concludes that despite all that, his 2 crown tattoos and mom and dad written under them are consistent with those of a Tren de Aragua member.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. They're just lying. So with that context in mind, and knowing that this is what Rogan and Kissen are talking about, let's hear more of what they had to say.
I think a human being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all. And this is the thing, measured twice, cut once. This is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific, and that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees, but let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs, and then how long before that guy can get out? Can we figure out how to get him out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
Well, if you think about it from a government perspective, and this is where I think it gets quite sinister, is once you've done that, the incentive structure is never going to be to admit that and deal with it. The incentive structure is to say nothing, to cover it up, to pretend it didn't happen.
But
right?
That is horrible.
So someone ends up in a black hole. But we've seen it. We've seen it in every country, including in America.
But that's the thing about politics, right? Never admit your fault. Never admit you're wrong.
It's so dumb.
And this is the thing we're seeing with the signal thing, and this is the thing we're seeing with this.
And there seems to be more frustration with the lack of accountability or the willingness to take responsibility for mistakes made. So far, we haven't heard anything from the Trump administration in regard to this specific individual who was sent away. But you should know that we have so far spent about $40 million to send migrants to El Salvador's SECOT. And that's according to the State Department. They apparently did an analysis and provided that analysis to senators. There was a delegation of 5 senators who even visited. I'm sorry, that's for Gitmo. So we've spent $40 million to jail 400 migrants at Guantanamo Bay. So it's not just El Salvador, we're also sending them to Guantanamo Bay, but that has become so expensive that the Trump administration quietly stopped doing that. And they actually sent about half of those 400 migrants back to the United States because of how costly it was. But I should also note that we've been paying El Salvador as well. The last time it was reported, we spent about $6 million to send migrants there. And now a federal judge has stepped in to do an emergency order to temporarily block what the Trump administration is doing. So this federal judge has issued the ruling saying that, listen, you can't do this without due process. Okay, so we're gonna do a temporary block. This is federal judge, US District Judge Brian Murphy. He's based in Boston, and he stated that the Trump administration must give those they want to deport a meaningful opportunity to seek humanitarian protection in the US. And Murphy wrote that officials may not deport someone to a so-called third country unless and until they provide the deportee and their lawyer written notice of the country to which they are being sent. Then the judge said officials must let them apply in immigration court for protection to stay in the US under the Convention Against Torture, which Congress ratified back in 1994. And then after that, the judge said the agency must await a final decision from an immigration judge. That's when the due process comes in.
Yeah, so two really positive developments there, because what are we most worried about in the Trump years? That they're gonna be lawless, right? So if Trump serves 4 years, creates a giant mess, but at the end of the day, we get back to America, there's elections and Democrats can win, Republicans can win, and et cetera, then it's all good, right? So like the 4 years will be terrible, but that's the consequence of elections, so we gotta work harder to win, et cetera, right? So one, the courts hold up today, that's what just happened, what Anna just read you, right? So they say, no, you can't go without due process, you gotta check with us first. Let's hope that Trump administration listens to the courts, so great, courts are holding so far. Then number two, I was led to believe that the entire brosphere, Joe Rogan, et cetera, were all Trump cultists and would never disagree with him and would never hold him accountable. Now it looks like they were holding him accountable, okay? And that's not just Rogan, a constant kissing. So he's a guy who's on the right. I went on a show, we had a big debate, funny enough, about transgender girls in high school sports. I said they should be in high school sports, he said they shouldn't, and we had a big debate about that, but he's a free speech advocate. And I was like, well, let's see. When Trump gets into office, we'll see if you're a real free speech advocate. And look at that. Turns out, like here he is. This is not about free speech as much, it's more about don't send an innocent man to a jail in a foreign government, a foreign country where they're gonna torture him.
It's about the fundamental right of due process.
Yes, but of human rights, rights. So he stands up for him. Great job, Constantine, nice job, we appreciate it. Rogan stands up for it, calls it horrific. Says it shouldn't even be controversial, it's clearly wrong. Now, it is controversial, there are MAGA guys who are totally like, oh, whatever, they're not citizens, who cares? We don't know, maybe he came in here illegally, oh, I trust Trump. Okay, that also exists, right? But here is independent media outlets and personalities going, no, not on our watch, this is wrong. Now, I said that online and some people responded, not good enough. He has to apologize to all non-Trump.
Okay, whatever, who cares about that? But like, look, let's get back to the actual political analysis here, because the one area where Trump is still doing well, the one area where he's not polling underwater is immigration. But if more and more stories like this come out, if more and more of his supporters start speaking out against what his administration is doing with immigration, it will not bode well for Trump or the Republicans. And just to give you the latest numbers, according to the latest CBS YouGov poll, on the topic of immigration, about 53% of Americans approve of what the Trump administration is doing and 47% disapprove. He's underwater in every other area, including the economy. And so that's something for him to keep in mind. You know, he thinks he's killing it with immigration, but if you make these massive mistakes and people, innocent people, like this, makeup artist, this gay makeup artist who spoke out against Venezuela and had a legitimate claim, asylum claim, gets shipped off to a detention facility for hardened criminals, gang members, and terrorists, people are gonna start turning on you.
Okay, last two things. Look, I would hope that even if you're on the right, that you would say, hey, it's one thing to send off guilty people to that hellhole in El Salvador. It's another thing to send off an innocent guy there.
Right.
Please tell me you think that. Okay, I think all decent people should agree to that. And I'm thrilled to see Rogan and Kissinger agree on that as well. And then finally, to Anna's point, and what we're all saying here, which is, look guys, there's still significant issues about why not just send them back to their home country? Why like pay a foreign government? Some of our members wrote in about that too. A foreign government to like basically torture them there. So those are all legitimate questions. But if you're on the right, Anna's totally right. This is gonna make your position totally unpopular. In fact, I think Rogan said it too. Like, so why are you being counterproductive? It doesn't make any sense. Now, on the left, they said there was no tren de Aragua. The rest of them are tren de Aragua. So I know that they weren't in Aurora, Colorado, according to some folks, okay? But they are. Now, most important thing, get him out of there right now. Look, guys, number one, he's innocent. He's not a gang member. He has no one to protect him, and he's gay. Get him out of there. What are we doing?
Yeah, and he didn't enter the country illegally. He entered the country through a legitimate port of entry. He had a legitimate asylum claim. He didn't come here for economic reasons. He's been speaking out against the government of Venezuela and is worried about being persecuted.
That's one of the worst places on earth, that prison. I can't imagine what they're doing to him. Every day that goes by is a travesty. Get him out of there. And so we'll see if there's anyone in the Trump administration who will listen to anyone, or if they'll just go careening out of control as they have been from day one.
All right, when we come back for the second hour, we'll talk a little bit about something else Joe Rogan said that might surprise you, and it has to do with our healthcare system. Come right back.
Trendy Arguay. Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power. We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And fill and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air. Cenk took an incredible risk.
And we're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jay, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right, a few years ago, when I realized that I was gonna have to put makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. This idea. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial how to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up. Couple streaks. This is the guy way of putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. They'll say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. And Michelle Moody, American Hero, gifted 5 memberships on YouTube. Casper.
Well, let's talk about healthcare. In fact, Joe Rogan decided to talk about healthcare. You know, someone who voted for Donald Trump, you would think he'd want to privatize it even more than it's already privatized. Well, does he? Let's watch.
Where are you at with healthcare?
I think healthcare 100% should be socially funded. I think that Medicare and Medicaid, having programs where people who are hurt can get an operation and it's not going to bankrupt them for the rest of their life, is another thing that I think society should be. It should be a part of our agreement to take care of each other as a community, that we chip in money for what people would think of as socialist positions.
That is a smoking position, almost as smoking as that joint that they have on set. That was Joe Rogan, of course, and he's been going to bat for socialized healthcare. And guess what? He's done it more than once in the past month alone. Are you shocked by that, Jake?
No, not at all. He endorsed Bernie Sanders. Look, I got super frustrated with Rogan when he was on like the tear against LGBT community, in my opinion. You know, he started talking about the groomers and
yeah, you wanted to fight him over it.
Yeah, I hated that.
Yeah,
I couldn't stand that, right? And then I didn't like the gaslighting of he's not majority on the right. No, of course he's majority on the right. These days he voted for Trump, right? But I also don't like the gaslighting of no, he's a Trump cultist. I mean, look at that. Look at him objecting on sending the innocent guy to El Salvador, and you can go on and on. And if he was a Trump cultist all along, why did he endorse Bernie in 2016? So it just doesn't make any sense. I don't like either side gaslighting, right? So what is Rogan? He's independent. These days he has more right-wing opinions than left-wing opinions. But does he have some strong left-wing opinions? Yes. Does he actually care about right or left wing? No, not really, not too much.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So he doesn't view the world in that way, and I know a lot of us do, and then so some of us get really mad over, oh no, you're on the wrong wing, etc. And it's okay, you could fight him on the things that you disagree with. I challenged him to a physical fight over the things that I disagree with him. So I'm pretty clear on that issue. But here, I will take yes for an answer.
Yeah, look, if you're a political junkie, you're likely obsessed with an individual's label, right? Is this person left or right? Go talk to a normie about politics, and they're all over the place on what their preferences are on political issues. And so Joe Rogan is not a political figure, he's not a political analyst. His podcast is not simply about politics. He's just a regular guy who's curious about things and has all sorts of guests on and talks about all sorts of things, right? He's not thinking about it as deeply as you think he's thinking about it, like in a political label sense.
First of all, that's true, like in terms of he doesn't really care too much about labels, etc. But also, he's not sitting there strategizing. Like, so people think like, oh, he's gonna go and say this so that he could actually win on the anti-trans agenda or whatever.
I got news for you, most people.
He's mainly getting high and then talking to a bunch of friends.
Yeah.
And does he talk to too many right-wingers, which then influences him more in a right-wing direction? I think so, right?
Yeah,
but that's okay. The answer to that is talk to more left-wingers or independents or whoever the hell you like, right? But to like cancel, who are you canceling anyway? The guy's got the largest podcast. Remember, they were all gonna cancel Rogan, right?
How is he supposed to talk to left-wingers when if a left-winger goes on that show, they get totally destroyed for doing so? I mean, Bernie Sanders running for president in 2020 was absolutely skewered by the left for having the audacity to talk to the man who hosts the most popular podcast in the country at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that was at the height of the cancel culture. And yes, there was both establishment Democrats and other folks on the left who are like, no, Rogan has some unacceptable opinions, so Bernie talking to him is unacceptable, he should be canceled. Take yes for an answer, brother, which Bernie, as we're about to show you, does. But get to the point of Rogan's actual policy. Yes, of course. I mean, he uses an analogy that I use in my book about the fire department.
Okay, so let's get to that.
Yeah.
Let's watch.
I always bring up the fire department because the fire department is one of the best examples that everybody sort of agrees. It's a socialist sort of thing. You give your tax dollars, the tax dollar supports the fire department fairly puts out fires for everybody. They don't not put out your fire if you don't have any money.
Yeah.
It's not like they don't, the fires don't.
It's such a good example, but when you compare that to the way that medical access is done, at least in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think most people realize we're a mixed economy, right? Like, we're not socialist, we're not fully capitalist. We have certain programs in this country, whether it's on a state and local level or a federal level, where it's socialized. Okay, Medicaid is a socialized program. Social Security, socialized. Medicare, socialized. And so we have private industry, obviously. We have private companies. They're able to function and operate the way they do. We have markets, but it makes sense to have certain areas of our society socialized so there isn't as much of a profit motive, right? So the priority is to provide the best service or care. So another good example is private prisons, where you literally have investors, you have shareholders, okay? You have a board, and you are looking to maximize profits. That is a perverse incentive because obviously you're going to want to criminalize as many human actions or human behaviors as possible to maximize your profits. Then you have, publicly run prisons. They're not great, but there isn't a profit motive and you don't have a fiduciary responsibility to return on investment to your shareholders.
Yeah, so let's expand on the fire department as I did in Justice is Coming. So in the old days, we had private fire departments and they wouldn't put out a fire if you didn't have insurance. The problem is fires spread. Same thing with viruses and with medical conditions, etc. So that's one of the many reasons why you need to socialize health insurance, not the doctors themselves. And Rogan went on a long rant about how he wants the best doctors possible. And he's not wrong about that. You can keep the entire system private except for the insurance, which is what the great majority of countries do. And every developed nation other than us does. They have the insurance public or socialized, and that gets to one of my main complaints. In this case, the number one culprit is not right-wing or left-wing media, it's mainstream media. Because in my whole life, they've never explained what socialism is. And they've never explained what a mixed economy is.
Right.
They just allow corporate politicians on both sides to call anything that helps the American people socialism, right? It's absurd, that's not true at all. And like Anna said, we have a mixed economy. Sneakers and jeans and burgers should be done by private corporations. And things like fire department, police department, things that protect your life and health insurance needs to be done by the public. Otherwise, you'll have a profit motive to literally kill people because those are your costs. Taking care of people are your costs. You wanna minimize your costs, so you wanna deny as much as possible. It's a death machine. It's insane that we allow it. No other developed nation on earth allows it. So what Rogan is saying is total common sense. By the way, Chris Williamson, another guy whose show that we've both been on, right? Yep. Another guy saying, yeah, the left is totally right about this. And of course this should be a universal health care. I love it.
So in areas where you find common ground with individuals who are to the right of you or just like full-blown, right wingers, I would say take the win. Nick, you can definitely work together in areas where you have common ground. Because look, guys, fact of the matter is most people don't agree 100% on everything, right? So if you can build alliances on specific issues to push government to go in the right direction, I say go for it, take the win. Now I wanna go to one other clip, okay? Because in a podcast episode a week earlier, Rogan again argued in favor of socialized healthcare and even voiced support for other economically populist ideas. Let's take a look.
This is very controversial, but socialized medicine. The idea that you should go broke because you broke your leg is crazy. If we're a community of people that are supposed to be supporting each other and helping each other, the best thing we could do is help one of the members of the community become active and productive and contribute to society. That makes everybody better and greater, and we should be willing to contribute to that. I believe in competition and I believe in merit, and I think it's very, very important for our society as a whole. But I also think there should be a much larger safety net for individuals so they don't go broke if they have a knee surgery. Or if you break your back, you shouldn't have to go bankrupt. That's kind of crazy. And I think labor unions are very important. It's very important to not allow a corporation that is entirely designed to make as much money as possible dictate how much money its workers get.
Yeah, I mean, look, my mind kind of goes back to the whole, we need to find a Joe Rogan of the left. And I think that mindset just fundamentally misses the point. The reason why someone like Rogan has broad appeal is that he's not really a hack for anyone or any side. He's a curious person. He's sincere about what he thinks. I disagree with him on some stuff, but at the end of the day, I do believe he believes everything he's saying. He's not putting on a show. He's not trying to appease one side or the other. And that's why he's popular. He has interesting conversations with interesting people. Sometimes I don't like the people he's talking to, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It's still a provocative enough conversation that people want to tune in.
Yeah, and so look, last two things here. We showed you that Media Matters chart last week that shows that TYT network is about half of the online left, right? And then people still go, we need a left-wing Joe Rogan. And so then why do they say that, right? Because when they come and look at our network, they go, yeah, but you guys are not controllable. Like, we just want you to say the Democrats are great. But that's not what a left-wing Joe Rogan would say, right? Like, you don't get to have the popularity of Joe Rogan, or by the way, of TYT, and control the message and just do propaganda for one party or another. That's not how it works. So snap out of it, people in the establishment. Okay, and by the way, again, to Anna's point, there was a Joe Rogan of the left. It was Joe Rogan when he endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016. And what happened? The left hated, or not all of it, by the way, but some portion of the left hated that Bernie went on, canceled Bernie and Rogan. How did that turn out for us?
Great, it turned out great.
Yeah.
Now Bernie, by the way, has weighed in on the latest comments from Joe Rogan, and he's a man of many words. Joe Rogan is absolutely right about this.
Yeah, will he get canceled over it? I don't know. Anyway, there's still some of those folks out there. We asked this poll. I'm curious how you guys answer. I'm a little worried about looking at it. They're about to put it on screen. We just did 3 stories in a row where Joe Rogan is against Trump's policies. Okay, will Joe Rogan always support Donald Trump no matter what? Show it to me. Do we have it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we had it on the live chat, no?
Okay, well, why don't we see how Americans are feeling? Because a 2024 Gallup poll found that 62% of Americans say government should ensure health coverage for all in the United States.
And by the way, that's 62%, right? Universal health care, I've seen it as high as 70%, but I'll take it. What does everyone in mainstream media say? Very unpopular, radical left policy, socialism, socialism. So mainstream media on economic issues is massively, and I don't even know if at this point it's fair to even call them right-wing or conservative. They're just corporatist, right? And they're like, the beloved health insurance corporations must be protected above all. Okay, we see you.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot more news to get to, including a master class in how to deal with a troll.
All right, back. We got the poll now. Now I'm gonna brace for impact. Will Rogan always support Donald Trump no matter what? 73% say no.
Nice.
That's good, I'll take it. 27% say yes, even though we just showed 3 clips in a row of Rogan not supporting Trump. But okay, we're making progress. I love it. Okay, thank you guys. Keep voting. That's what I love. That's why it's fun to watch live. Okay, Sit and Drops on Super Chat said a public Medicare plan option for all would save the government trillions of dollars and put $5,000 plus worth of premium costs back in your pockets. That's true. Over the long run, universal health care in every other developed nation costs half of what we pay. Can you imagine paying half of what you pay for health care? And it's better and longer life expectancy. But everyone in mainstream media has lied to you your entire life about that. Little Max says, I always enjoy my time with TYT, but this is a very thoughtful show in particular, very much enjoying it. Just wanted to say so and contribute as a way of saying thanks. Great work as always to the TYT team. Thank you, Little Mac, we appreciate you. Now let's go to YouTube members. Lady AF says, about Anna's clip on Piers Morgan. That was good. I should start watching Morgan when they're on. I agree.
Thank you.
But you could also go to tyt.com/press and see those, because a lot of people lie about those appearances. You can actually watch them with your own eyes and see who's right and wrong.
Yeah, someone accused me of signaling something because I was wearing red, and that's hold on. That's the dress that's literally the exact same dress I was wearing when I told Alex Jones to get off the stage. You
FF.
That was the exact dress, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not. It's just a dress.
Oh, you know what I'm signaling with this outfit? That I only have one outfit.
Yeah, true.
That's what I'm signaling. Okay, but I know we're super rich. Anyway. Swimming in the, all right, I'm not gonna say. Blue Sky says the world has changed and people know the truth about the occupier. People know the truth about Bibi and his map. Bibi won't succeed. Here. The map, by the way, is of Greater Israel, and they're not hiding it. They're like, yeah, it involves taking the West Bank, Gaza Strip, southern Lebanon, Western Syria. And then when you say, hey, you guys are gonna steal Gaza, West Bank, etc., they go, anti-Semite. I'm like literally just quoting your map that you brag about all the time. They're like, no, we're gonna take from the river to the sea, but if the other side says from the river to the sea, deported, arrested, canceled, take their funding away, blah, 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 okay? At Twitch, Green New Dealer Dragon says, how many LA sheriff officers with cop gang tattoos have been deported to El Salvador? Look, I was thinking, man, so Jesus has a lot of tattoos. Can they tell him different from a Venezuelan? He's an American citizen. I mean, who knows these thugs? That's what happens when you don't have due process. Ryu Rao writes in, wouldn't regulations be a better option for maintaining manufacturing jobs in the US? One option would be to eliminate the cheap cost of labor by mandating that companies have to pay US minimum wage for overseas factories. Companies would never let the politicians do that. And it would be a difficult thing to propose about the minimum wage in other countries. But I like that you're thinking of different solutions. Way to be constructive, okay? I like that a lot. We'll be right back. Back on the online news show, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian with you guys. What do you got, Anna?
This next story, look, if you're not familiar with the content creator who has dubbed herself Crackhead Barney, just be ready for it. She's amazing. I think she's highly entertaining, but she also trolls all sorts of politicians and public figures in New York City. And lately she caught up with someone who's running in the mayoral race in New York City. And I think the way he handled it was a masterclass. So without further ado, here you go.
What do you think about me storming the mayoral forums? Are you mad? Are you mad at me?
I'm not mad.
What do you think about it? You think I'm cloud chasing? You think I'm annoying? What do you think? Come on, give me a real answer.
The first time I was scared because I did not know who you were.
And now you know who I am.
And now I expect you at the forums.
Okay, good. And what are your other candidates saying? Are they hating me?
I think they also expect you at this point.
Oh, great. So Zorhan, who the are you?
The content creator who goes by Crackhead Barney caught up with New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani and basically hit him with her signature interview style, a little bit of trolling. Now, his handling of this entire situation, in my opinion, is a masterclass in how to use what could potentially be a disastrous situation to your benefit in order to message what your political values are and what you're trying to get accomplished should you become the next mayor of New York City. So without further ado, let's watch more.
What are you gonna do for black people? What are you gonna do for the
what we're seeing?
Black people like me, annoying in their underwear, what are you gonna do?
Look, every single person in this city deserves to afford to call this city their home. And what we've seen in a crisis of inequality where 1 in 4 New Yorkers are in poverty, where 500,000 children are going to bed hungry, is that there's a disproportionate impact on black New Yorkers. From 2010 to 2019, we saw nearly 20% decline in the population of black children and teenagers. And that's because of how expensive we made this city. We are losing the fabric of what we love about this city. And we need to make sure that for black New Yorkers who want to raise their kids here, this is the most affordable and easiest place to do so, because right now, that's not the case.
That was That was amazing. Whether you agree with his message or not, and I happen to agree with a lot of what he said there, the way he handled it was so incredible. Now, if you go to her X page, for instance, and you see how Richie Torres handles it, even Norman Finkelstein, like he was just kind of caught off guard, didn't really know how to handle it. But in this case, Mamdani was ready. It's almost as if he expected the day that she would do this and used it to his advantage. It was super smart.
I have a slightly different interpretation, which is that it's not that he expected it and was ready for it. He was just ready for it because that's what he actually believes. That's why that video resonates, right? Because that's the problem with politicians. They're not ready for it because they're like, I have not been programmed for this. My consultant said I have not scripted something for this. We will get back to you later, but we hear that I am supposed to say billionaire buddies.
Oh my God, can you imagine if she did that to Kamala Harris during the presidential election? Oh, disaster.
I mean, I would be imagining a day where the remembering of the forgetting has happened already. I don't know. She would have the most nonsensical answer. Biden would be like, listen here, Mac, okay? I remember when you and Corn Dog were coming at me, and then you guys ate my uncle.
Do you remember when Biden called someone fat, like during his first campaign for president?
Yeah.
Someone asked him like a challenging question. You just like called him fat.
He's like, listen here, fat. And then we're like, hey, there's something wrong with him. They're like, oh, you're crazy. There's nothing wrong with him. That's just the way he speaks. I'm like, all right.
Okay. All right.
Anyways, but really, like almost any corporate politician would melt with the simplest little thing. And here, the reason this brother is doing well, by the way, and resonating is because he's actually passionate about the things that he's trying to fix in New York. Because you know why? Most of the people running are super rich. And so when you're super rich, you don't know how disastrous it is that you can't make the rent in New York, right? This brother seems to understand that most people can't make the rent. It's super difficult in a place like Manhattan especially. So that's why he's running to fix those things.
Right.
As opposed to I'm running for my own ego and I have these scripted talking points from my consultant so I could win and not actually do any of those things, but feel good about calling myself mayor.
So let's talk a little bit about his politics. Some things I agree with, some I don't, but nonetheless, out of the Democrats that he's running against.
Why don't you cancel him? You don't agree with some of his positions.
Okay, hold. Okay. When you look at the field of Democratic candidates who are running in this primary, he stands out as the best one in my opinion. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. But so his full name, Zoran Kwame Mamdani. He is an assembly member representing New York's 36th district. So he does identify as a democratic socialist. He wants to improve public transportation and make it free. I'm curious about how you would fund public transportation by making it free. It would be a little bit difficult, but I'm interested in hearing more about it. He also wants universal childcare that would be free at the point of service, which I think would be fantastic. I think that would actually help stimulate the economy because a lot of parents are struggling with the high cost of childcare. He's only 33 years old, and so just to give you a little bit more about him and how he differs from who's really polling at the top right now. So while many of his progressive rivals in the race have adopted more centrist positions on certain issues like policing and public safety, Mamdani, a democratic socialist, continues to embrace left-leaning views that have become less popular with voters in New York. So for instance, he has become the standard bearer for progressive Democrats as a fresh-faced alternative to his more veteran rivals, notably former Governor Andrew Cuomo, he's actually the one who's polling at the top. Mayor Eric Adams and Brad Lander, the city comptroller. Mamdani underlined his campaign's core staples: free buses, a rent freeze, and city-owned grocery stores. So just to give you a sense of where he's at compared to the other candidates, other Democratic candidates. So this is data from the Honan Strategy Group. They found through their polling that Andrew Cuomo has about 41% of the support.
Ooh.
But Mamdani comes in second at 18%.
Not bad, he's beating Eric Adams.
Yeah.
And in the New York mayoral races, there's sometimes huge sprints at the end. So Andrew Yang was leading in the last race until Eric Adams sprinted at the end, and then Yang fell back a lot because there was a couple of missteps in his campaign, et cetera. But it made a giant difference because a lot of people in New York pay attention to this. So like when you've got a rural race that not a lot of people are paying attention to, you could buy that with money, right? But in a media center like New York, it's very difficult to do that. So now, and Bill de Blasio was third or fourth place when I said he'd go to the top, and he did. So you see these big swings all the time. So he could still surge and win. Now Anna's right, and now that we know a little bit more about him, there's some parts of his policies I don't agree with. For example, I don't think a rent freeze is the right way to go, because that's artificial, and it could create other consequences that are not right. But caring about how bad the rent is super important.
Yeah,
right?
You do need to get the price of rent down considerably. When you have price control policies implemented, it does tend to have unexpected consequences, and it ends up driving the cost of housing up. Some of the rent control policies, for instance, especially in LA, has unfortunately discouraged new developments for new housing, which we desperately need. Part of the reason why it's so expensive is we need more housing, more inventory. And by the way, the other area is where he kind of differs from Cuomo on policing. So look, whether you like it or not, it does seem as though the voters in New York City have kind of soured on some of the left-wing perspectives on policing. And I think that's what's kind of holding him back compared to Cuomo. So according to the New York Times, Cuomo has already made running against the far left a feature of his campaign without mentioning Mamdani by name. So he actually has called defund the police the 3 dumbest words ever uttered in politics, even though he actually signed some police reforms into law when he was mayor. But
that's not an even though, by the way. We're in favor of police reforms. Defund the police is a completely different thing.
So Mamdani, though, by contrast, has called for cutting police spending in areas like its communications office and eliminating its strategic response group. So
look, he has interesting ideas, free buses, and he seems to care about the people. And so that's why I'd take him over somebody who's a corporatist like Andrew Cuomo any day, right? Or Eric Adams, who's got the corruption problems, etc. We're asking you guys the same poll in a live chat. Shows 6 to 8 o'clock Eastern every day. So be part of the show. That's why I mentioned that. And that's interesting. 40% saying Cuomo.
Wow.
So that's super interesting to me. And some like normie Democrats still have fond feelings for Cuomo for whatever reasons, etc. And look, I'm not trying to hate on anybody, right? Other than, come on, Eric Adams, are we really?
No, okay, I'm gonna hate on Cuomo. Like Cuomo made, I know that everyone likes to focus on the sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations against him, which ended up ousting him from office. And that was bad. I'm not trying to minimize that, but his decision to send back elderly nursing home patients to the nursing homes in the middle of COVID, thus spreading COVID within the nursing homes and killing a bunch of people. I mean, that was horrific. No, and his corruption with like the real estate markets in New York, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. He's like a classic corporatist, and the corporatists are all corrupt by definition. They take tons of corporate money and serve those donors. Okay, so that's why, to me, I wouldn't vote for Cuomo on a boat. I wouldn't vote for him on a goat. Okay, so I'm going Mamdani if those are the choices. But unfortunately, he's making the same mistake that's driving me crazy with other candidates. You're not gonna win an election in New York if you're perceived as not being tough on crime. You don't have to be draconian. You don't have to do weirdo things that are right wing and like, oh, I'm gonna, go after black and brown people again. No, don't do that. Don't do that, right? But at the same time, saying you're gonna get rid of the strategic center, it's terrible optics, terrible optics. Yeah. At a bare minimum, I don't even agree with the policy, let alone the optics. You know what's not terrible optics though? The next clip you're about to watch. Okay. Let's take a look.
Jordan, would you f me?
No.
Are you married?
Yes.
Who are you married to? A white woman, Latina, Arab?
She's Arab.
And what are you? Are you Arab, Indian? What are you? You look ambiguous. You look weird. You look weird. What the
I'm an Indian, Ugandan, New Yorker.
Okay, so you're African American. So would you claim the African American status like Elon Musk?
No, I would not.
Why not? You're African, but you're African, right? I knew you grew up there. Your middle name is Kwame.
I am. I'm proud to be Ugandan.
Okay.
But I think that is misleading.
And were the Indian Ugandans colonialists, or did you come happy? Did you come to up, or did you come in peace?
We came in peace.
And I know your father's a professor.
My father's a professor. My family came from Gujarat to Uganda about 200 years ago.
So the caste system, what are you? Like Brahmin? Are you like are you like untouchable? What are you? You look a little light skinned.
I'm somewhere in the middle.
Okay, so you're a piece of
No, he honestly handled it really, really well. And he's likable.
Yeah.
He's likable. He seems to not take himself too seriously. Yeah. Like, that goes a long way in politics, so.
Yeah, and it's a small thing, but I like it that he's not cheesy enough to call himself African American, even though he's from Uganda.
He's smart enough not to. Let's just put it that way.
Don't do that. So he's South Asian, and who cares, right? But at least he's doing it right, unlike Elon. So again, I like his principles. I like that he has different ideas and cares about the people. And so on that alone, I'd go with him, even though I don't agree with some of his policies.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, it is possible not to agree with some policies and still support a candidate or a person.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We don't live in New York City. New York City dwellers get to decide. All right, so we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about a fascinating lawsuit against Disney over their Snow White live action movie. And no, it does not have to do with the main actress. It actually has to do with their decision to use CGI. Did Disney make the right decision? We're gonna figure it out when we come back.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
All right, Semper Fire Dog writes in on Twitch, Cenk is my spirit animal. I love his passion and his fire. I'll never stop supporting him for making me see the light and pulling me out of MAGA land. That's beautiful. I appreciate that, brother. Maybe we should do like something on the website for all the folks who were MAGA or Republican or conservative and have flipped over because of TYT. That would be a long list, and I appreciate all you guys. And as I always say, guys, I appreciate you most for having an open mind. That's the most important part of it. So thank you, guys. So Trump Loy writes in, Zohran Mamdani, yes, he handled that silly diamond reincarnation with his own genuine beliefs. Get him on a TYT interview, please.
I am curious about him. Don't get me wrong, but I'm curious about her. Like, is she a right winger? I don't think she's a right winger.
I don't know what she is. This is the first time I've ever seen her.
Really? I first saw her on Piers Morgan. That devolved, okay? That was not the best venue for her.
Yeah.
She's entertaining.
She's just trying to provoke, right?
Yeah,
either way,
but
in either
she's
direction.
hilarious.
Okay, I don't know her, but that's interesting. Okay, yeah. All right, so Boomer Dragon Cat says, you're a longtime viewer when you try to stage direct Cenk and Anna telepathically and get mad when they don't follow through. Okay, Tugging the Tubin, oh boy, writes in, have you all seen Pete Heggs' tattoos? If he were brown, he'd be yanked up too. Yeah, if he
Not a bad point, actually.
Yeah. His tattoos are actually problematic, but that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, so guys, of course you can support us through membership by hitting the join button below. You could also go to tyt.com or tyt.com/join. And their annual membership gets you 2 months off, so that you could check that out. And there's so many wonderful things on our website, including the petition that we started on where'sourcut.com. You can just go straight to where'sourcut.com. So Elon has taken a lot of subsidies from the US government and contracts too. And so we're asking him to give us our cut. So if the American taxpayers like you guys funded his businesses, which you did, then shouldn't you get some shares? Shouldn't you get a portion of the proceeds? Not only a petition, but a way to contact Doge directly, and even Elon's emails on there. So where'sourcut.com. Of course, Shop TYT has some beautiful merch for you guys. Check that out. Look at Anna in the middle of that picture. Okay, well, that makes sense. So I wear my TYT gear everywhere. Oh, by the way, free shipping in the US for orders over 200. And I got my new Operation Hope hoodie. Love it, wear it all the time. By the way, we've got podcasts of all of our shows. So make sure you're checking those out wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, we're kind of killing it, not a big deal. So check that out wherever you get your chance. I'm starting to listen to a lot more podcasts these days. I want to concentrate on podcasts a little bit more. I think that's going to be great for us. Okay, Ramon, thank you for gifting 10 Young Turks memberships. What's up?
Nothing. It's just you sounded like a dork. I want to concentrate on podcasts a little bit more.
I do want to concentrate on them. No, I say that not as a host, but as the guy running the company. Like,
oh, okay,
that's
okay.
What I mean. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and I want to build up old school a little bit better too. So we'll do a lot more on podcasts. We're going to do more interviews coming up soon too. All right, a lot to look forward to. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Fun ensues.
Man, this live action Snow White movie, it's just rife with all sorts of controversy, lawsuits, problems. So let's get into the latest lawsuit that we're hearing about.
I was a little taken back by they're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Still Snow White, yeah.
Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
So, look, take a step back and look at what you're doing there.
Yeah.
I know. That makes no sense to me.
But, so what,
you're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of seven dwarves living in a cave to get what the you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause?
Well, according to people with, similar condition to Peter Dinklage, they would say no, you did not advance our cause. And that has to do with a new lawsuit that has been filed against Disney by individuals who claim that Disney engaged in discrimination by not hiring, members of the little people community, and instead using CGI and kind of moving away from, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Okay, so let's get into these details. That was Peter Dinklage, actor. He made those comments on the Marc Maron podcast back in 2022. Now a group of little people actors is suing Disney for discrimination. So when Disney's live action Snow White was announced, the studio stated that the Seven Dwarfs would be referred to as magical creatures and they would use CGI instead of human actors. Look, this is just my preference or my opinion, but I think it looks weird. Okay, but that's the direction they went in because clearly they wanted to avoid offending anyone. Clearly Dinklage's comments struck a nerve with them and they took that as like a red flag and wanted to go in a better direction. And so, the dwarves were voiced by obviously a bunch of actors: Andrew Barth Feldman as Dopey, Titus Burgess as Bashful, George Salazar as Happy, Jason Kravitz as Sneezy, Andy Grachulichin as Sleepy, Martin Kleba as Grumpy. That was the only little person who did voice acting for the CGI characters. I think that's important to keep in mind. And then Jeremy Swift as Doc. Now they added, meaning Disney, to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, we are taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting with members of the dwarfism community. We look forward to sharing more as the film heads into production after a lengthy development period. But the community is not pleased by this because they feel that they've been robbed of acting opportunities, of which there aren't many in Hollywood, as we know. And so they have filed a lawsuit as a result. So one actress by the name of Allie Chapman, who's part of this community, says, 7 talented little people actors could have played those roles in the live action remake, and yet they chose to use cartoons. It's an insult and discriminatory. her husband, Matt McCarthy, who's also a little person, stated, "We've been totally shut out, but we're not going to go down quietly. It's hard enough in Hollywood. Everyone's trying to make their dreams come true. When you're a little person, opportunities are few and far between. I was born to play dopey."
Yeah, like that last comment. Okay, I vote no on the lawsuit. I've got a lot of different thoughts on this, but you don't have a right to an acting job. So I understand what they're saying, and I think that Dinklage, who I really love as an actor, might have done some damage there with that interview. I'm almost certain that that's because it got a lot of buzz. That's why they pulled the actual actors, and so now they're mad. But like, if you're Disney, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So if you're going to put in real actors and then you got criticized for it, now you don't put in the real actors, you get criticized and sued for it. So I empathize with damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I don't know which way they're supposed to go. By the way, this whole thing is conundrum on top of conundrum, right? So it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but you're not supposed to say dwarves anymore. But you can say it in a movie, and you can say it in Lord of the Rings. They're not little people in Lord of the Rings. Are they little people in Snow White? So like, we've changed the words a lot, right? And I empathize, I get it, but at the same time, we gotta settle in with one and keep it, right?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, look.
Yeah.
So my general thought about these live action movies is maybe don't. Maybe be creative and put out new content, and you're not just piggybacking off of content from like the 1930s, because obviously content from the 1930s is not gonna pass for what's acceptable today. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
So by the decision to make this movie from the very beginning, I mean, it should have been a red flag.
No, I got you. So you get into historical context and the conundrum that almost always presents, right? I mean, like even on non-political things, like Hansel and Gretel, we watched some version of that with the kids and regretted it. Because when the witch decides that she's going to eat the small children,
yeah, it's not good.
It's problematic. And by the way, a lot of the German stories that we get these from, a lot of them are from Germany, are about don't go in the woods. Okay, the wolves will eat you, the witches will eat you, everyone will eat you. You know why? The German woods are kind of scary, okay? That's why they wrote them in the 1930s in Germany in a different context, right? But now everybody goes, no, she has to be white, or she can't not be white. They have to be dwarves or little people or CGI. But why does Disney not move on? Because there's money to be made.
No, I get it. And as I've talked about before, these live action remakes, it does attract an audience because of nostalgia. So I get that. But if you're gonna do it, then do it. Okay, because you can't be everything to everyone. You're not gonna be able to please everyone. And so if you're going to do a remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, then go for it. And be unapologetic about it and move forward, because you're gonna upset anyone anyway, okay? Or one group of people over another anyway. That's just the society we live in. And until we just kind of steamroll it, that society or that culture within our society isn't gonna go away. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and whenever you have a situation like this, I always think about shoe on the other foot, right? So I'm like, okay, it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If you make it Snow White and the Seven Little People, it sounds absurd, right? I think it does. But on the other hand, I think, what if it was Snow White and the Seven Muslims?
Oh my God.
And the Muslims in this country used to be called Mohammedan or Musliman, okay? And I was like, would I care if we were called Mohammedan? I don't know. Musliman sounds kind of funny. It almost sounds like Musliman. Not so bad.
It does sound like Musliman, actually.
Yeah. So anyways, my point is, look, I might be upset about it too if I was in that community, depending on what my perspective was within that community. I might have been in the Dinklage camp, I might be in the anti-Dinklage camp, I'm not sure. So I'm not trying to minimize their concern about it, but a lawsuit ain't the way to go. I mean, you weren't owed that job, that's not a thing.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's the debate about creative license. I mean, Disney could very easily say, well, we have creative license and we decided to go in this direction.
Of course they do. I mean, and if it was Snow White and the Seven Mohammedan.
I really hope they never think of that. That'd be crazy.
This is such a hilarious day. Anyway, I wouldn't get to sue and be like, I was definitely going to be one of the Mohammedans.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So the actors that have decided to join this lawsuit, a little presumptuous, no?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting debate, but I think I generally agree with you. And again, if you're gonna remake a movie from decades and decades ago, the standards are gonna be different, the cultural standards are gonna be different. You're either gonna have to go for it and be unapologetic, or just don't make the movie. You're not gonna be able to please people. It is what it is.
Yeah, okay, last two things. For the members, I actually just went to visit this castle that all this is based on in Germany, in Bavaria. And I'll tell you about that, fun stories about that in the post game. I also had dinner with 2 members of the Israeli Secret Service. I'll tell you about that in the post game. So become a member, hit the join button below, or tyt.com/join. And I finally started thinking about all the different things. Snow White and the 7 Turks, that takes a different turn. Snow White and the 7 Germans, don't do that one. Don't do that one.
All right, let's do one more story before we wrap up the main show. Starting with this Ford executive who is interesting, let's just put it that way. Ford executive Mike O'Brien retired after 32 years at the company, and he left his colleagues with a parting gift, a spreadsheet, which you would expect at a corporation, no? Now let's take a look at this friendly seeming guy, and then I'll give you some details about what this spreadsheet is about. It's not any spreadsheet. This one was a meticulous log, a record of every verbal flop he'd heard in company meetings over the last decade. The tracking actually started on a whiteboard outside of his office back in 2014. Employees would walk by and basically see their mangled metaphors or misused idioms displayed for all to see. Then they started adding their own. So let's take a look. After one colleague declared, "It's a huge task, but we're trying to get our arms and legs around it," O'Brien quipped, "Adding legs into the mix makes it sound kind of kinky." How is this allowed?
I don't know. You wait till you get a load of the poll that I asked for on this. Is this man the most annoying coworker ever, or an American hero? It's in the live chat, 6 to 8 o'clock every day.
So that came from a colleague mid-meeting, okay? O'Brien kept score for a decade, tracking, cataloging, and ranking quotes from CEO Jim Farley to entry-level employees, even himself. So Cenk, if this guy was in our TYT morning meeting, would that offer you comic relief or violence?
No, well, who's in the meeting? So
what is that supposed to mean?
Well, okay, look, guys, I'm gonna read you some of the ones that he documented, so you see why I say maybe American hero, and then I'll answer Anna's question. So here is one. I'll start with graphic 4. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse to death. Okay, okay.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, we're dancing on thin ice. These are swing for the moon opportunities.
What is that supposed to be? It doesn't matter, keep going.
Okay, I'm gonna mangle it, he'll put it on his board. We need to make sure dealers have some skin in the teeth.
Oh my God.
It's no skin on our back. Too many cooks in the soup. Well, that would be a problem, that would be a problem. And read between the tea leaves. And we need to talk about the elephant in the closet. Get him out of the closet. Get him out of the closet.
So the spreadsheet ran 2,229 mistakes in total.
So, okay, the mixed feelings. On the one hand, these are hilarious. And if you guys put them up on a board here, especially if I said them, I would laugh, okay? But most people don't feel that way. When you make a mistake and somebody puts it on a billboard, on a board somewhere at the office, they're not gonna like that. Okay?
It depends on the culture of the company or the office, right? So I remember when we were a small office, maybe 6, 7 people total. Anyway, we used to do bus nuts, remember?
Oh, of course.
And so we would like tease each other all the time and like crack jokes about each other, to each other all the time. And we all knew that it was like good humored, we were having fun with it. But as a company expands, you have different personalities and some might not take kindly to it. So you kind of have to read the room and you need to understand the sensitivities of various people.
Yeah, and so there's 2 different problems. There's that, so And as the company gets bigger, you have to account for people who are not as thick-skinned, because that's normal. That's part of humanity. Let me see this. American Heroes winning 51-49.
Small sample size.
Okay.
Small sample size.
Well, I don't know. It's okay.
What do you mean? 208 votes.
Yeah, well, we just started. Let's see how it turns out. Watch the show live. Be part of it. You crazy? Okay. So, anyways, so other folks might that in the past where we might have thought it was fun, etc. Other folks might look at that and go, "No, that's attack against me," or that's etc. And they might hate that. So you can't do it. You just can't do it, right? And then there's a second component, which is that it starts with fun, and then some people are jerks. And then it goes from fun to like, ha ha, you said this wrong. You should be punished for it. Okay, etc. And then you're like, okay, now we're not having fun anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Totally.
Like it went from good natured to like weirdly evil. Right? So, anyways, I like that he did it because I'm amused by it. But if I worked there, no. Let's put it this way, I wouldn't allow it. It's because people are gonna catch feelings.
They are gonna catch feelings. I remember I used to say, I bust my ass off. And finally one day, Cenk is like, why do you say that? I don't think that's what it is. Like, I think it's just.
No, it stays on. You just bust it.
You just bust it.
All right, more of this nonsense in the bonus episode for members. Hit the join button below. We'll see you there.